So again, I welcome back to my channel Excelshare Academy. So today we are going to proceed with the lecture. So we started talking about the membrane transport, right? Solute transport. So we started with the discussion of simple diffusion, and then we also discussed that there are two types, passive and active transport. So among which first we started with the passive. So diffusion comes under the passive because no amount of energy is required. So let's proceed with the other types. So after diffusion, let's talk about the osmosis. So what is osmosis? This from our very early 11th, 12th, we are studying all this thing. So it is the diffusion of water or solvent molecules from a more dilute solution. Where? Now when you say dilute solution, it means it has got high concentration of water, okay? And it is moving towards a more concentrated solution where less concentration of water is there, down the water potential through a semi-permeable membrane. So what it is saying that in one place you have got high solid concentration and a membrane permeability is there. Then you have got few. So from which direction? That is down the water potential. That is from, so here the water concentration is high and here water concentration is less. Or in other words, solute concentration is high here and here it is less. So water will move from high to low or solute, that is from high concentration region to low concentration it will reach, okay, it will move. And this has to happen through a semi-permeable membrane. So whenever semi-permeable membrane is present, then it is called osmosis. Otherwise, it becomes a simple diffusion. Now, it's a spontaneous process, okay, and that's why it happens down the gradient, down the concentration gradient. The pressure required to maintain the equilibrium where the net movement of solvent is zero is known as osmotic pressure. So what is osmotic pressure? The pressure required to maintain the equilibrium. Okay. So this is very simple and very few MCQ comes from this topic, but still we should learn all this thing. Okay. So, sorry. Yes. So what is happening over here? You can see that here the solute concentration is more. One second. Yes. Okay. So what is happening over here in the figure, if you see, so you have got high solid concentration. These dots represents the solute concentration. Okay. So what is happening? High solute concentration and less water. Here less water is there. And here in this case opposite. So what is happening till a equilibrium is reached? That is the amount of water here and here, and the concentration of the solute becomes equal. That is, they're reaching the equilibrium. The osmosis will continue to happen. Okay. Okay. So this is also very simple. This we have known about this thing, right? So in this case, you can see that the best example of osmosis can be understood with the help of studying the RBC, red blood cells. So if you have, there are three types of condition: isotonic, hypertonic, and hypotonic. So what is happening in each of the cases? So you have got the isotonic, where you have got, this is simple. I believe also that you already know all this thing. They have got the same osmotic pressure. What does it mean? It means that if in a container there is a semi-permeable membrane, the concentration is same here as well as here. Okay. So it means what? Both the solute concentration is same in both the partition. So it is, now if they have a different osmotic pressure, so it can be either hyper or hypo. Hypo means less, hyper means high or more, right? Now hypertonic solution means higher osmotic pressure, so water will tend to flow in it. So let's see the example over here. So you have got the hypotonic condition, means what? You keep the RBC or any animal cell into the hypotonic solution. So here you need to understand that outside the cell, the solute concentration is less and water concentration is high. So what will happen? Water will move inside of the cell. Okay. So because the water moves from higher to lower, so water will move inside of the cell. And what will happen? Before reaching its equilibrium, the cell may burst. Okay. Now next, isotonic condition. Isotonic means both it is equal. So there will be flow of water, there will be also outflow of water. So because of which, what will happen? It will be maintained normal. So your cells can survive, and hence in our body, the blood circulation system, whatever it is, the pH is maintained every time, it is maintained, and that's why our RBCs are functioning normally. Now, if you suppose have hypertonic condition, it means what? The outside of the cell is having high concentration of solute. Okay. Now, once that is the condition, what will happen? So the water inside the cell will be more as compared to the outside solution. So water from inside of the cell will come out, and that will cause into the shrinkage. Okay, your cell will become shrink. Now, in the case of plant, it is called turgid when the hypotonic condition is there, flaccid and plasmolized. So you can see that the cell membrane becomes shrink, leaving the cell wall. Okay, if you see the figure over here, you can see that there is a cell. This is cell wall of plant, and the membrane will start coming shrinking. Okay. So what is happening? The cell membrane of the plant will leave the cell wall and become shrink. So this is what is happening in the isotonic, hypertonic and hypotonic condition. Okay. Sure. Now, about the turgor pressures, I already mentioned. So it is the hydrostatic pressure in the cells within the wall. So here we are talking about the plants. Okay. So when we talk about turgor pressure, it is with respect to the plant cell. So if you see over here, now in a plant cell, there is a vacuole. Now in the plant cell vacuole, you know that it is the largest occupying organelle, correct? So it occupies the gases, excess water, everything. Now, if you put into a hypertonic condition, what will happen? It will start shrinking. Okay. So the vacuole becomes very small. So this is what they are saying about that. A cell wall enables cells to take an extra amount of water without bursting. Okay. So if suppose plant cells are kept in a hypotonic condition, the vacuole will take the maximum of water without getting burst. Now, the cells takes this water and push against the cell wall, which pushes back. Now, this pushing back to the cell wall is called the turgor pressure. So, for currently, just remember this much, because when we start doing the plant physiology, there will be more to talk about this. Okay, so don't worry about it. Now, facility diffusion. Now, from here, please have the very good concentration. Okay, it's very important now. Yes. So, facility diffusion. Okay, so facility diffusion of uncharged molecule or polar molecule. So just keep in mind, we are talking about here the uncharged and the polar molecule. Okay, now it is a spontaneous process of a passive diffusion. It means again no energy, so no ATP. So of a molecule or an ion across the living membranes with the help of specific integral proteins. What you have to remember here is facility diffusion will always be carried out by integral proteins. Okay. So it means what? In a membrane, you are going to have certain proteins channel which are going to allow your molecule to pass from inside outside or outside to inside. Now, they also contain multiple membrane spanning alpha helices. So remember, in this case, I have mentioned you that whenever a protein is there, integral proteins are there, they're always the alpha helices. So this is called spanning. So in this case, how many are there? Let us say this is N terminal and this is C terminal. It means this protein has got three membrane spanning alpha helices. Okay. Now, these proteins have two common features. What are those features? That they facilitate net movement of solutes only in the thermodynamically favored situation. It means what? Your delta G is going to be negative. So, what does it mean? In other words, it is going to be your spontaneous. We don't need any energy. It is a spontaneous process. It means that whenever there is a high concentration of solute molecules present, it will bind to the carrier molecule and the movement will take place. Okay. So this is very important. Please remember that the facilitated diffusion helps in the movement of solutes only in the thermodynamically favorable situation. So here your delta G has to be negative. What is delta G? It is the Gibbs free energy change. Now, they show a measurable affinity and specificity for the transported solute. What does it mean? It means that if suppose there is a glucose transporter, then only glucose it is going to transport. It will not bind to sucrose or it will not bind to any other sugar molecule. Okay. So it means it has got the strong affinity and specificity for their transported molecule. So it's not like that if you have a Na plus channel, K plus or calcium plus can go. So for each ions in a living organism, you have got all the channels. Okay, specific different channels are present for each of them. Now, these proteins also show the behavior of saturation regarding their binding with solute molecules that experimentally distinguish the facilitated diffusion with simple diffusion. So here what they are saying is that if suppose you have got 4 carrier proteins, okay, and you have got 5 solute molecules, so how many will be passed through? 4 only, 4 molecules only, because it gets saturated. Okay, so how will be the graph of this? Listen carefully. So if it is a simple diffusion, what happens? More the concentration of the solute, more diffusion will take place. Okay, so it is going to be a linear graph. This is in the case of simple diffusion. You can stop me, okay, in between if you're not able to understand. Now, if it is a facilitated diffusion, what does it say? That it gets saturated. So even if you increase the concentration of the solute, what happens? It is going to bind only to the number of the carrier proteins available. So there is no effect on the rate by the solute transporters. So what does it mean? It means that after some time, this is going to become saturated. So initially it keeps on increasing. Why? Because suppose 10 are there. Slowly, you're increasing the solute concentration. So once your carriers are 10 and your solute molecules are 10, what will happen? After that, this becomes saturated. So this is in the case of facilitated diffusion. Okay, so it means what? After some time, even if you increase the concentration of the sample, it is going to be showing the saturation curve. So I hope this is clear. Yes. So look at the figure also over here. Now, this is how the concentration gradient they have shown. So here the concentration of the solute is high. Okay, let us say this is your carrier protein, which is helping in the transport of the solute molecule. So how is the concentration gradient? Here it is high and here it is low. So it is high over here, here it is low, right? Now, with passage of time, what will happen? Slowly, these molecules are going to bind to their carrier proteins and they will be transported to the other side. Eventually, what is happening? The concentration of here, extracellular and intracellular, it is going to become equal. So every time, in each case of the diffusion, we are reaching equilibrium. Okay. Yes. Okay, so this is the kinetics of simple and facilitated diffusion. Just now I have explained you. So let's listen once again. So you can see that in the case of simple diffusion, as the concentration gradient increases, in the case of simple, you can see that the graph is going linearly increasing, right? So what does it mean? From initially, if I had 10 molecules, it will be reaching here. If I increase the concentration of the solute, it will keep on increasing. So more the concentration, more the diffusion will take place in the case of simple diffusion. Now, whereas in the case of facilitated diffusion, you have got only limited number of carrier proteins. Okay. For example, let us talk about GLUT. What is GLUT? It is a glucose transporter. So it helps in the transport of the glucose. So let us say that in intestinal lumen, you have got around thousands of glucose transporters. Let us say only thousands are there. Let us assume. Now, as you start eating, you start degrading your food particles into small glucose units. Now the glucose is converted. Now what do you need? We need to absorb this glucose. Now how this glucose will be absorbed? Once it is being transferred from the intestinal lumen to the blood, right? So these glucose needs to bind to their glucose transporters. So initially there will be one or two, and then after some time, the molecules from 1 to 10 to 100 to 1000, it will become, right? Now, once this glucose molecules are 1000, you have got the glucose transporters also 1000. What is happening? It means that it has reached its saturation. Now, even if you increase the concentration of glucose, it is not going to get increased. The transport rate will not increase. It will become saturated. Okay. So this is how the kinetics of simple and facilitated diffusion looks like. Now, many proteins facilitate diffusion by forming protein line pathway across the membrane, right? So this is what we were talking about. So till now, as I said about the carrier proteins, they are nothing but the transporters only. So they allow the movement of hydrophilic molecules without coming in contact with hydrophobic core of the plasma membrane. So we know that glucose is a polar molecule and it cannot cross the plasma membrane directly, correct? So in order to help glucose to move, there are certain transporters or the carrier proteins which go and bind, and in between they have got the hydrophilic core, right? So from that hydrophilic core, it makes a contact with the polar molecules, making hydrogen bonds, allowing them to cross the hydrophobic lipid core of the plasma membrane. So they are nothing but the transporters. So this is one of the examples I've shown over here, and this is exactly how your GLUT transporters work. So protein transporters, they're also called the carriers, and they help in wide variety of ions and molecules to cross across the membrane. Now there are two conformations. In few cases, you will see that they are called as closed state or open state. Whereas in certain textbook references, you can see that it is called relaxed state and the tense state. Okay. Now, let us see this example. So what is happening? You can see that there is a hollow transmembrane protein to which your glucose molecules binds. And you can see that the structure over here, it's a hexose sugar. It has got these 6 sides, and the binding pocket of the transmembrane protein is in such a way that it will only accommodate glucose to come and bind. Okay. Now, this is also, as I mentioned before, it's all about the affinity and the specificity of the membrane. There are certain glucose transporters who have got the less affinity for glucose. So they might bind to mannose also, galactose also, but with less affinity. So they are specific for hexose sugars, but affinity for glucose is high as compared to mannose and galactose. Okay. And there are few glucose transporters which are very, very, very specific to glucose only. For example, like in the case of brain, you have got GLUT4 transporters, which is very specific only to glucose only. There you cannot have mannose or galactose binding to the transporters. Okay. Now what is happening over here? Yes. So glucose comes, it goes and binds, right? Now this is your closed state. It bind, and then what happens? The glucose is transferred. So one molecule of glucose is then transferred over here. So you can see that at a time, from one carrier protein or one transporters, one glucose molecule only can be transported. Okay. You can stop in between if you're not able to understand. Yes. So there are different types of transporters. This is also very important because sometimes they will just mention you the name of the transporter and you have to guess which one is it. So is it a unipotent? So from the name itself, it is very clear. Uni means single, right? So it transports single type of molecule down its concentration gradient. It is always be like this only. So you will have GLUT1 for glucose. So let me just give you additional information. Here GLUT1 to 12 transporters we have. What you have to remember is it means 12 types of glucose transporters are there, and each glucose transporters are made up of 12 alpha helices transmembrane protein. Okay. Now, then we have got the symporters, or also called co-transporters. What does it mean? It means that in the same direction, if suppose you have a transporter. So this is your plasma membrane. So along with the molecule, another ion or molecule will be also transported. So it means what? At the same time, two different molecules will be transported. So what does it mean? It means that if suppose glucose I need to transport, I also need the action of Na plus so that the glucose will be absorbed. So there are also glucose transporters called SGLT1, in which to absorb the glucose, we also need the action of Na plus. So with one glucose molecule, Na plus will also be transported. So it transports a couple of ions or molecules simultaneously in the same direction. One down is concentration gradient and the other its concentration against its concentration gradients. Then we have got the antiporters. So antiporters means it is going to be in opposite direction. What does it mean? So if you have a transporters on a plasma membrane, one second, just let me make it more nicely. So if you have a plasma membrane, then you have got the antiporters. So in which I'll have one molecule going in this direction and the other one going in the other direction. So these are called antiporters. So what are the examples? The exchange of Na plus in with respect to Ca2 plus exchanger. Okay. So this is just one example of each. Now, as we move forward, we are going to talk about these transporters in detail. Now, why it is important? Because its structure is important. What amino acids are involved in interacting with the binding molecule is important. Then its structure in 3D. So today we are also going to study one bioinformatic tool which helps in understanding the 3D structure of these proteins. Okay. Okay, so let's talk about glucose transporter. So as I mentioned before, there are 12 types are there. Okay, so 12 types are there. It has got 12 hydrophobic alpha helices. Now, what you have to remember is this is important. So in glucose transporters or GLUT, there are amino acids like serine, threonine, glutamine, asparagine. Okay, I repeat once again: serine, threonine, glutamine, asparagine. They form hydrogen bonds with the OH group of glucose. So what does it mean? So if you see in the previous structure, when we were discussing that to the glucose transporter, your glucose comes and binds, right? So here you have got all these amino acids: serine, threonine, asparagine, and glutamine. So these amino acids are helping in interacting with the OH group of the glucose. So they form hydrogen bonds. Now, what you have to understand here is this is how the specificity of glucose transporter works. So it says that if these 4 amino acids are able to make 4 hydrogen bonds with the incoming binding molecule, then it means that the molecule is specific to the transporters. Let us say that galactose is coming. So if you see the structure of galactose, at the 4th carbon, instead of HOH, it is OHH. Okay. So what is happening? So in that case, I don't have one OH to make interaction with these amino acids. Instead, I have H only, and H alone cannot make the hydrogen bond. Correct. So what will happen? If suppose by mistake galactose is coming, I won't have one of the amino acid interacting. So out of 4, only 3 will be there. Now, if it is only 3, the transporter understands that it is not specific to its binding site. So it will kick out the galactose and it will wait for glucose to come and bind. Are you getting, guys? Pallavi? Is it clear, this one? This topic is clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, okay. So just stop me in between, because from here onwards, the topics are becoming high. I mean, it becomes complicated. Okay. Now, So all GLUT protein transport glucose. So all these 12 glucose transporters, they are going to transport glucose, but they have got different expression. What does it mean? In each, for example, your epithelial cells, your liver, your brain, your muscles, they all have got different expression of these transporters, and they are independent at different rates, having the glucose metabolism. Now, for example, GLUT1 and 3 are found in RBC, and it has got high rate of glucose uptake. Okay, these are the things which you have to remember. So as I mentioned before, the amino acids name and the list. Now GLUT2 is found in liver, so it has got high influx efficiency whenever there is an insulin response. So what is happening? So when insulin is there, insulin response is there, so liver takes up or activates your GLUT2 transporter so that it can take the excess of the glucose and can convert into the glycogen for the further storage as a further storage molecule, correct? Now we have got GLUT4 also, which is expressed in fat and muscles for glucose uptake again upon the insulin response. So what you have to remember, the amino acids name, these ones, and 1 and 3 are found in RBC, 2 are found in liver, 4 are found in fat, muscles and all. So this is what you have to remember from this slide. Now, this is the diagram how your glucose transporters looks like. Okay. So what is happening over here? So first you have got the glucose binding site. Okay, this is one of your GLUT transporter. You have got the glucose binding site. Now the binding of glucose takes place. So what are those amino acids? Serine, threonine, asparagine and glutamine. Okay. So when these 4 amino acids are making connections with the glucose, it goes and binds. Now what is happening? It is getting closed. So this is the closed form of your GLUT. Remember I said 2 conformations are there. So that becomes closed. Now what is happening? Change is there. Okay. So when we talk about the change, okay. So when I say change, so your glucose transporters was like this. Okay. Oh, time is running out. Okay. So your glucose transporters was like this. Now once the glucose binds, what happens? It gets closed and then it opens to the other side. So what is happening then? So from here, your glucose will get transported to the other side of the membrane. Okay. So that is the same thing has been shown over here. Okay. So here it changes its conformation, and what is happening, you can see from here to there, from outside to inside, your glucose has been released. Okay. So this entire process is resulting in the movement of glucose from the extra to intra. Okay. And there are other also which will actually help in taking the glucose from inside to outside also. And finally, restoration of the molecule. So it comes back to its original shape, so that when this is free, the other glucose molecule can be taken and it will be transferred. Okay. Yes. So I'll just take glucose only because time is running out. So now if you see the structures over here, so this is how your 3D structures look like. Can you see? So over here, how many should be there? 12. Remember I said 12 alpha helices transmembrane spanning regions are there. So you have got 12. So you can see how they are beautifully arranged. And in the center, you have got the hydrophilic core. This is your hydrophilic core. So to which your glucose goes and binds. Now, these are the open and the closed states. So can you see here, this gap is open, right? And then what happens when the glucose binds, it binds to this core. Then it is taken and you can see that here it is getting open and then it is released. So it comes, binds, there's a conformational change and it goes out. So how beautifully you can see that the structure is changing its conformation in order to take all the glucose from one side to the other side. Yes. So this is, remember I was talking about the co-transporters and these co-transporters and the importers. So this is one example of that. So you can see that if suppose let us say that this is your gut lumen and intestinal epithelia is there. So this is your GLUT. Okay. Now along with the glucose molecule, your Na plus is also coming. Now glucose will be taken into the blood circulation, and then what is happening with the Na plus? It is also taken out, but with exchange of K plus inside. Now why this is important? This is we talked about the membrane potential, right? Membrane potential. So this will talk in detail. So here one of the channel, one of the protein is your Na plus K plus ATPase. So about this we'll talk later. So what you have to remember over here is that the glucose is driven into secondary. So these are also called secondary transport also. So glucose has been taken along with the Na plus. So what is happening? The charge inside is becoming high because of Na plus. So glucose will be then taken out. But what about the Na plus? So in order to take the Na plus, you have to take the exchange of K plus also. Okay. So this is another example which happens in the epithelia. Okay, so let's talk about the kinetics over here. Now, the kinetics of glucose with the help of the GLUT1 we are talking here, it is similar to enzyme catalyze. So we know that enzyme plus substrate, it forms ES complex, and finally what we get is product plus the enzyme. In the same way, we have got the solute outside, GLUT1. We got solute outside, GLUT1 complex, and then what? The solute is taken inside and your enzyme is free. So the same kinetics as we have studied in the Michaelis-Menten equation. So this is what? The same thing. Now, if you see, there are different types of GLUT we talked about. So you can see that the Vmax, or the maximum velocity at which the transportation will be high, it is going to be different for each GLUT. So it is different for liver, it is different for muscle and fat, it is different for brain also. So you can see over here how it is different. So even if you give the same concentration of the glucose, the rate at which these transporters are going to transport is going to vary. Is it clear in this topic? Please remember, this is very important. Okay, so this is just a table, the primary site of expression. So you can see in the case of GLUT1, which is present in the erythrocytes brain, we have got the high affinity. Then in the case of GLUT2, in the liver and pancreas, low affinity. Now you see highest affinity in the case of neurons, kidney, testis and placenta, where maximum amount of glucose has been taken by the body or by the cells. Okay. Now when you see small intestine, testis and kidney, in the case of GLUT5, it also have affinity for fructose also. So again, it's a 6-carbon sugar. So sometimes instead of glucose, fructose can also bind. So it is not that specific, and the affinity is less. It's only 1 times. Then we have got the brain again. GLUT6 is present and having low affinity for the glucose. Okay. So I hope this is clear. Now there's one last topic. So here what I would like to do is, actually you people have to download a software called PyMol. Okay. So what you can do is you can download the software PyMol, and then it is for 30 days. Okay. It is for 30 days. Free it is, and you can download that. Guys, can you see this PyMol? I have shared actually. Can you see this one? Can you see the, can you see?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So what you have to do is then you have to open a file. Okay. So usually I keep on the desktop only. So there is the structure. Now, can you see this structure over here? Here? So
Yes.
what you do is download PyMol. It is free for 30 days. Okay. This is just to learn only. And how do you download the structure? There is a site, Protein Data Bank. Go to Protein Data Bank, write whatever protein structure you want to visualize, and there is an option called file, download. Just download, and whenever you are downloading that, just go to file, open, and then wherever you have saved that file, just upload it. Okay. So you can see this is the example of GLUT1 I have taken, and if you see there are, see inside, can you see here the glucose is present at the center. Okay. So in this also you can also study. Now, if you see the top view, can you see over here a hollow hydrophilic core is there? So in the center, you can see the glucose molecule is there. Now, if you want to study what all amino acids, like I mentioned, serine, threonine, asparagine, and glutamine are there. So for that, you can just go to this site, show. You can see, okay. So I have taken this, show, and you can go for the labels like cell or whatever lines or ribbon, dots, or the name of the side chains, whatever you want, you can actually label and study. Okay. So if I label it, oh, it's not coming. See, can you see? So how many amino acids are present? Each has been labeled. So what you can do is you can just select one region and you can just see what all amino acids are present. So here they have labeled all the amino acids. So you can hide also. So it's just like a, software. You can, it's very easy. You can just play around it. I just want to hide everything. Okay, so now everything has been hidden. Now S means to show. So if I want to see a ribbon molecule, I can see, or I can see a cartoon which I initially downloaded. So S means you can just see what all is present. Okay. Then, so all this you can study. So you can zoom it. You can just study each and a particular amino acid. You can also calculate how many loops are also present. So with this, I would like to conclude the today's session, and I welcome our newcomer also. Sorry, the time has been gone. So any more doubts, because the meeting time is getting over? Yes, anyone? Any doubts are there? Okay, chalo. Thank you guys. And just let's meet again, okay? I'll just please join me again.